Good morning, everybody. I'm not sure if you all heard that or not. Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. My name is Charlie Gray. I'm an account manager with Magic Software, and I'm here with my colleague, Joe De Silva. Joe is one of our senior technical architects, and he's going to be taking us later in the morning on a walkthrough of an example integration scenario. I'm hoping you can all hear me well enough. We did do a very quick dry run, and it seems like the sound is okay. Now, everybody's time is precious, so we will try to keep the webinar on integrating CRM and ERP systems to about a half hour, which means there's not an awful lot of time for us to delve into great detail. But then we actually have quite a big group, and still growing as I look today, so it actually would be risky to get into a lot of details that might not be relevant for everyone. So we will keep it at a fairly high level. Obviously, we'll be happy to arrange a more detailed conversation with each person individually where that makes sense. So we will follow up and chat to you over the next or first few days of next week. One of the factors that will determine how long we're all on the webinar will be the number of questions that we see coming in from you guys, and we do welcome those. So in the interest of sound quality, everybody's phones have been muted. If you have a question, you will see like a chat box at the bottom. Please do type your questions into that box that you should see on your screen, and we will keep the questions to the end. Yeah, on the right-hand side, there's a box with questions, and if you hit the plus sign, you'll be able to ask them there. We'll keep those to the end, so it might well be that by the time we get there, your question may have been answered, but please do type them up as they occur to you. Okay. So by way of an agenda, I'd like to get the ball rolling, first of all, talking about some of the integration challenges that we face in integrating particularly CRM and ERP systems, maybe some of the situations where it's useful to do so. Now, I'm conscious that we work in a world which uses a lot of jargon. Indeed, I'm often struck by the notion that one of the obstacles to clear communication between technical people and business people is that both groups have got their own vocabulary with acronyms and buzzwords, etc. And I'm saying all of that by way of an in advance apology, because almost certainly we will use some buzzwords today. So I'm sorry if they add to anybody's confusion. Feel free to call me out on it if I do. The intention, though, is to clarify things today and not to confuse them, so we will try our best to do that. Back to the agenda then. As you'd expect, I'm going to explain a bit more about our smart integration platform, which is Magic XPI. And I know that we've got some existing customers, but we also have some new people with us today. So in case you've never really heard of Magic Software before, I'll tell you a little bit about us, and then I'll hand over to Joe, and he will give us a look at how Magic XPI does what it does. Okay. So some of the challenges then, in terms of application integration. If we look at, I've shown a list here of some of the types of situations where some level of integration might be needed or at least useful. And obviously it's not an exhaustive list, and not all of these things would apply to the needs of everybody's business who's on the call today, but it's a decent place to start. A few situations where business processes either need to or could benefit from being synchronized or connected together in some way. So today we're here to talk about CRM and ERP. It could equally be CRM to an e-business portal, a logistics or a supply chain system, or some other key like back office function. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but taking one or two. The top one, converting opportunities into orders, is probably the most common challenge for everybody using these two systems, CRM and ERP. So an opportunity goes through the various stages in the sales process supported by the CRM system, and at the point where a successful sale is concluded, then the information needed to fulfill that part of the business process is going to reside most often in your financial system, your ERP system. So that's needed for order production and invoicing purposes, where the customer information lives in the CRM system, and price lists and products, etc., live in the ERP system. Typically, companies need the CRM to hold a record of prices quoted to potential customers even before they become customers, and therefore they've got a presence in both systems. The next one on the list is another one which data deduplication, bit of a mouthful that. It's a huge problem for most companies that have got CRM and ERP systems, and in this age of mobile users and mobile front ends to our websites, it's becoming even greater because people on mobile phones entering data don't have enough screen space to type correctly. Maybe they don't have enough patience to type correctly. Bottom line is that what happens is that we end up with several records for the same person because their name has been spelled slightly differently or their address has been spelled slightly differently in some way. And it's very easy to populate various other systems in your world with several records for the same person. You end up mail-shotting the same promotion to the same person 4 or 5 times. So cleaning that up is usually quite a high priority, certainly for a lot of the companies that we're speaking to at the moment. Next one on the list is a common one again, master item data synchronization. So it's going to apply to information that's going to be needed in several systems. Am I speaking too quickly? I'm just being waved at here. I'm conscious that I have a strange accent, but you're going to hear an even stranger one in a minute. So I will try to not speak too quickly. Bear with me. Right, I was just getting some feedback there, so I'll take a bit less time on the sales pitch. I was trying to paint a scenario, so here we go. Right, let's cut to the chase. Maybe the last one to mention might be mobile apps, because your CRM or your ERP system probably already have a mobile front-end offering that will be related to that system itself. But in a lot of cases, it might be useful for mobile employees to have access to information from more than one of these systems. So these are the types of situations that I think we want to talk about in a wee bit more detail. You can relatively easily do a point-to-point connection for any one of these situations that would get you over the immediate hump, and there's a couple of other ways it can be done. It can be done in a kind of batch way. The example here is where you've got system A or app A on the left-hand side, where every transaction that happens in app A creates an information log, and that's stored in a file that's exportable. So that becomes an export file, and then whether it's once an hour, once a day, etc., but periodically that export file from app A will be transferred with all of its information logs up into app B. App B then imports that export file, and the whole thing starts again however often it's needed to happen. But we think there's a better way to do that, where if you have certainly several connections that you want to make, you can minimize the maintenance burden that's involved in all of that. So that brings me on to Magic XPI, which is our smart integration platform. And what it does essentially, and I'll be brief about it, is it aims to separate the business solution from the technology that's lying underneath it. So there's a runtime engine, and that manages the integrations for all of these different platforms you see underneath and all these databases, applications and environments. And in order to do that, it keeps all of the information it needs in its metadata repository, which I guess is like a fancy name for a rules engine. So it's about business process integration, and what it does is listens out for specific events that need to trigger other processes for integration. So I've listed some of the systems that it works with, all of these applications, all of these endpoints, and there's going to be a demo or a walkthrough later, so I'm not going to go into any more detail here. Nice thing about it is there's no coding involved in it, so very much a case of defining what needs to happen as opposed to how it gets done. Okay? Give you a very quick example of that. So here's a very high-level process flow where on the left-hand side we imagine a new contact being created in our CRM system. That then gets validated. If it's not valid, not a real phone number, not a real email address, etc., it fails, and in this example we would send an email to the system administrator, maybe to the salesperson who tried to create that record. most of the time it's going to be valid, so we would create a new contact in the ERP system and maybe in SharePoint and maybe in other systems that are relevant. Okay. This is all done by dragging and dropping, as I said, no coding. So we drag and drop from our component list, which I'll show you now. So these are the components that are already in the box. So as well as having approved and certified adapters for the main CRM systems and the main ERP systems, we've got JD Edwards, we've got SAP, we've got Sugar CRM, Salesforce on the CRM side. So we also have, though, other connectors there, as you see, that they enable us to communicate with legacy systems, so via things like web services, .NET, XML, Java classes, etc. And of course, you'll see there we've got Microsoft Exchange, we've got a Google adapter, so we can also integrate front office systems like Exchange, Google Calendar, Mail, etc., etc. And to define that a little bit, just pull these from that box of components onto the kind of working area. So defining the flow of the processes, there still isn't any coding. I'll give you a quick look at what that would look like. In this case, if you see that blue area in the middle of the screen here, that's the top of the flow, and that's what we call the trigger area. So in this case, the SAP system or component is listening out for a specific event that's going to cause it to begin the integration flow. Below that, the trigger data in this case causes us to create a new account, and in this example it's Sugar CRM. So the next step would be making sure the account was able to be created, so we have an error check, and we'll log that if it failed for any reason. If it's successful, then the relevant values from SAP will be created in Sugar CRM, and we will populate the right fields. So how do we populate the right fields? Let me show you that part. Again, no coding, it's very much a visual drag and drop, and this is called the Datamapper. That lets us drag and drop the fields that we want to update from the source on the left-hand side here to the destination on the right-hand side. So if we need to do any transformation, for example, maybe we want to concatenate the first and last names into one single field, then we can do that very quickly and easily using the transform option. I don't know if you can see my pointer, but the kind of formula sign that you see is where you would do that kind of thing. Okay. What I'd like to do now, if I may, just to get a little bit of information about who we've got on the call, is do a little poll. So it's your turn to do some work. I'm going to put a poll on here just to find out what systems are in place where you're working. So on your screens, in a minute, you will be seeing that. Launching the poll. And I'll give it a couple of minutes to see if we've got some answers from more than say 9 or 10 of you. Quite a mix, actually. Okay, thank you for that, and I'll close it there. Looks like most people are using Microsoft Dynamics of one flavor or another. Fair few using SAP, a couple using JD Edwards, and a mix of others. We didn't have room to list every ERP system, so thank you very much. That's useful to know. And that'll maybe inform some of what Joe's going to go through. Okay. I'm hoping you can see my screen again. Can you, Joe? Yeah. Good. Okay. Just an example of the sort of flow that we've been talking about here. In this case, we're talking about Salesforce and SAP, but it could equally be Sugar CRM or an MS Dynamics CRM system through to another ERP system. So you got the CRM system handles all of the incoming leads qualification to the point where it becomes an opportunity, and then you go through a wholesale cycle, and that would all be supported, as I said, by the CRM system. At the point it becomes a sale, then an invoice needs to be raised, perhaps a credit check needs to be done, or some historical information needs to be found, as well as, obviously, invoicing the whatever it is that you've sold, and if it's a physical object, then delivering that, having it produced, maybe out to another system, like, as I said earlier, a logistics system, something along those lines. If anybody's got any questions up to this point, then please type them into the box. And other than that, I'm going to ask Joe. Sorry, no, I'm not. I'm a little liar. Very quick bit about who Magic Software is. Briefly, we've been in business for over 30 years, since I think 1983, in fact. Over that time, we've gained a lot of expertise particularly in development and integration platforms, but always in innovative technology, but always with a focus on business needs. So we try to take something which is inherently complex and simplify it so that it's understandable by business people and actually can deliver benefit to business people. We are quite a large company. We are quoted on NASDAQ Stock Exchange. We've got about 15 offices worldwide, and where we don't have offices, we have partners. In fact, we've got, slightly out of date, we have over 3,000 partners worldwide and over 1,000 employees. So that's a little bit about us. As I said, do keep questions coming in. Let me finish with, before I hand over to Joe, just finish with another poll, which will be just to find out how you're currently doing whatever integrations that you're doing. You should be seeing that on your screen now, and as I say, feel free to tell us the naked truth about how you're doing your integrations as things stand. And by way of an adjustment to that, as soon as you finish doing that, I'm going to hand over to Joe. Okay, lots of people using CSV type, file type uploads, and in lots of cases that will do. As I say, it tends to become an unmaintainable problem when you have a lot of different systems to connect and different processes to connect. Okay, that's enough of that. A bit of a mix of the other things as well, but for the most people, it seems to be periodic uploads. I'm going to close that now. Should be back to my screen, and then Joe, if I can just hand over to you and make you the presenter. Should be seeing your screen in a second. Yep.
Thank you. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Charlie, if you can watch the question. Okay, my objective is to show you an integration example between two applications here, which are Dynamics, which was actually one of the top ones on the list of attendees today. And I'll also show you JDE, which is, in this case, is Enterprise One. If you remember from a list that Charlie showed you, all the components, so just remember this is just one scenario. So you can have the same process implemented between any application that you have, be it a well-known product like SharePoint, Dynamics, Salesforce, etc., or SAP, but also between any existing bespoke legacy application that you currently might have in-house. Let's start creating a lead. So just to show you, this is actually happening live. The objective, I'll create something here in Dynamics, and it should show up here in JDE. So I'm going to start.
Is it possible to make your screen any bigger?
Bigger. I'm not sure. It's just your view. My screen is actually quite big. If you could, yeah, if your screen look quite small, you might need to double click on the top or the other expand screen. So hopefully you can see okay. Just to show you that this is actually, I'm not, the data is not there before. Let me just log in again into JD. So if you, for those of you that use JD, This should be familiar. Let's go to my address book and type webinar, just because I'm planning to create a lead called webinar. And if I try to find any contact there as webinar, you see that the list returns blank. Now let's go to Dynamics and create one. So if I create one, let's call it just a fake data webinar, and let's put the time there, 10:26. And I'm not going to fill in any of the details, but just to demonstrate the concept. But I want you to notice this field here called ERP reference. So it's currently blank. I'm leaving it blank, and I'm going to save this and close that. So I now have new account, in this case, that is called with that name. And in the background, what's happening is there is a process that is being orchestrated by Magic XPI. And if you remember from the slides, this is defined this way. So the slide was showing something that looked like just a design thing, but actually this is the code. So this is actually looking for any event or time or whatever you define as a trigger to be watched, and then getting an account and doing some work with it. So if you think that all those connectors, they actually can be used here to program, the concept is just drag here, drop it here, and then configure it. I'm not going into the technical details, but it will be interesting for you, or if you want to know more details, we can come back here. Something happening parallel. So depends the speed of this link depends on your own definition on the product, but let's try to find anyone called webinar. And now in JD, I have that new object that's called webinar 1026, and you can see that I have a new record created in JD. I could even do changes here that at some point will be going back to Dynamics, but at the moment, while that's happening, let me just show you something inside here. When I go back to Dynamics and look at my record, I have now a reference that was created which matches that record in JD. So there was, in the background, in Voodoo Land, if you like, a whole trip from Dynamics into JD. JD did something, and then that went back into Dynamics. So that's the bulk of my demonstration, is to show you that you can connect those systems and events or actions that you can define, you can program, will make those applications sync data or sync events or activate a workflow and act upon your decided business process. And the business process is defined here on this programming area, but this programming area uses no code. So just to show you one example, if I open this by double-clicking, what was the logic that I created here? I'm presented with a wizard. That wizard allows me to configure it, so I'm not, again, typing any code. Because I'm pointing to JDE, it starts speaking JDE information that makes sense for the JDE people or experts. And you, from JDE, should recognize this. And when I look at the detail, it says I'm getting an object from Dynamics that came as XML and inserting into a JDE. And I have even this visual mapping that I can open up and show you just a bit of details. My screen is quite limited here because of the webinar, but you should be able to see the details. And notice that on the left-hand side, I have my source data, or events, or services, and on the right side, I have my destination, which is in this case JDE. So my source is from Dynamics, my destination is from JDE, and each object speaks the data or the language of that system. So from the right-hand side, if you don't work with JDE, probably this doesn't mean much to you. But from the JDE people point of view, it means it's quite clear. So you just, by talking to both experts from each operation, you say, well, what data should be put where, and you can simply drag and combine information by connecting one side to another, and you can even do multiple combinations and even transformations. When you get to the transformation level, you don't need to, again, code. What you presented is, if you make a parallel with Excel, is the same level. So I have a list of functions, I can access data, I can access variables that currently are available. If I have a service that sends that information to me, like a web service or HTTP, I can simply point and use that data. So it's very, very high level, very graphical, and you only, as a developer, if there's any of you that do development, like using SQL or any other language, you only use that if you do need, if you feel very comfortable. But that, again, is wrapped at a very high level, very graphical interface. Once you've done that, you simply click this button and generate an executable that can now be deployed on multiple servers or multiple platforms. So this is, even though I'm using Windows here, this can run on a large list of platforms, including IBM hardware or Unix or Linux, etc. So hopefully you got an idea, and as I said, you probably have loads of other questions. You can type some of them in the list on the webinar. And please, if you want more details, just contact us, and we do a one-to-one session, and we can spend a few hours detailing this for your case. Thank you very much. I'll pass it back to Charlie.
Thanks, Joe. I've actually got a couple of questions that have come in, and my apologies to whoever it was who said enough of the sales talk earlier. My apologies. If I didn't do the sales talk, Peter, I would get sacked. So I take myself back as a presenter. One of the questions that came in, I can answer myself, which is, will the slides be available afterwards? Yes, they will. I'll package them up into a slideshow, and I'll share them on. I'll send you a link to them on Google Drive. It's a fairly big file, so probably better if I don't try to email it. Joe, one other one that came in was the Exchange connector shown on the component box said Exchange 2007. Later versions, are they under development? Do you know?
Yeah, Kevin. Yes, Kevin. This will be. This is constantly in evolution. We just released a few on 4.1, so that's it's a constant. Whenever a new version, a new product reach the market, we tend to create a specific connector to support that. But please notice that in general, even without the specific connectors, you can integrate with any service language application out there using the standard connectors. So what the specific connector brings to you is just a set of wizards, and it facilitates a lot more because you have less steps to go through. But in general, the other connectors allows you to link to anything that you might have in-house. So.
Good, thank you. And actually, I should probably apologize for being a little bit lazy, because I think I took that screenshot of the component list about a year ago. So it'll be a little bit out of date. So I'm sure there are some new ones in there. Joe, you're best answering the next question, which is, how long does it typically take to develop an integration like the one you just showed?
Oh, the one I just showed is just there was no data actually being passed there. This is just probably an hour, something like that to do. But it's interesting that you can get quite a lot of results in a couple of days, 1 to 3 days, let's say. So it's very easy to demonstrate if you have a specific difficulty today to integrate system A to system B or service A to service B, that we come in and install things on your on-site and just do a quick proof of concept. We can demonstrate that in, as I said, 1 or 3 days, depending on how complex or what level of detail you want us to go through. But it's very, very quick. It's surprisingly quick.
Okay, I have a supplementary question then from Kevin, which is, does that include Office 365? And if a legacy app has no API, how would we connect?
Yes. So for the first part, yes, the Office 365 is one of them. I actually starting doing a project next week with that. And to your second part, if an application doesn't have any API, yes, you can still integrate. So how do you do that? Let's say you have a legacy system that was written 20 years ago, running on specific hardware, etc. Normally, these applications have some sort of data store that we can access, so that's one option. The other one, normally that application might be if you have source code for that application or have access to specific interfaces, and I mean interface here, code style of interface, we can wrap that interface and start making calls as if we were extending the existing code. It doesn't matter which code is there, we should be able to access it. And in that sense, you could use XPI to be the API. So if you say, okay, I want this legacy system that I only have interface access to be able to support web services or REST, which are recent technologies. How do I do that? You put XPI, XPI becomes the interface, XPI understands the data, understands the calls, and XPI now exposes that as a web service or as a REST service. So you can use XPI to create interfaces to become the APIs to any application or system you have there.
Good. Thank you. And I think that's all of the questions we've got now. Yep. The last one.
Yep.
Yeah, that's. So I hope that's been a useful little bit more than half an hour, but I hope it's been of interest and of use. As I say, we will sort of drop a line, and I'll certainly send a link to the slides that we showed as well, and maybe have a chat over the first few days of next week. If there's anything more urgent than that, then by all means get in touch with us. But hopefully speak to you very soon, and wish you a good weekend. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you all.
Bye, everybody.